And my mic was off. Hi everybody. I turned the music down. Welcome to CSS Capism. We're doing some live coding today. I already see some messages in the chat. So hi everybody that is already here, and hi for everybody that's gonna join us later on. I hope the music is okay. If something is wrong, I'm in the chat. Yeah, so what are we going to do today? Let's just jump in. Today we're gonna recreate this twining loader or whatever it is. I didn't really find a suitable name. Let's say I make it a bit bigger so we can see it. So there's a few nice things going on in this effect, but the main thing that people ask me about is this the filter effect that we're gonna get to in the end. And we're going to recreate it like really from scratch, and we're going to start in a second. Just before that, because yesterday Firefox finally released Firefox 121, excuse me. So now we have has selector. Just wanted to show something that I posted yesterday in Twitter. A nice way to manipulate CSS variables and CSS properties by using a drop-down menu. And it's all native, it's just a select, it's using has and checked. So you can just, if a certain option is checked or selected, it's the same thing, so you can set whatever you want to its siblings. So it's great, and now we have has, finally. We waited for it for so long. Yeah, so let's begin. As I said, we are rebuilding this this loader. If you have any questions, again, I'm in the chat. Let's just check that everything is okay here. Great. So, here we are in CodePen. This is our very basic. All we have is a single div with the class of loader. And in the CSS, all we have is just a basic reset. We're not going to touch it. And we have a body color, background color. We don't need the color. And this is just for centering everything in the middle. So, and by the way, we're not going to do any 3D today and any perspective things, maybe in the next streams, in the next live codings. So, this loader is actually is made out of a lot of single dots, and we're going to see how these dots combine into this shape that we see after we use the filters. But first, let's begin with our HTML. And we're going to use a lot of dots, and I'm going to use this I element as a dot, as an element. You can use a div or whatever, just force of habit, I'm using an I. Ooh, yeah, it's white. And I need a lot of points, so you can use how many points you want. I'm actually going to use 120 points, just because it's a nice round number, and you can divide a lot of numbers in 120. So here we have 120 elements. Here we go, and that is it. And if you're afraid of working with a lot of elements, you shouldn't, because all we're doing is animating the translate and the transforms. And if it's a loader, so it's supposed to be when there's not a lot of other things in the screen, so it's okay. And as you can see, it's going to run perfectly fine. Yeah, so let's go into our CSS, and let's create a loader class. And this loader class is going to have just a position relative, because all the eyes is going to be position absolute relative to this loader. Let's give it a width of, let's say, 30 EMs, and I'm using EMs because later on, if I want to resize everything, I can just change the font size, and everything is changing accordingly. And let's give it a height. I can also use an aspect ratio of 1, but let's use a 30 EM as a height. And just so we can see it, let's give it a background color. Okay, this is white, but we don't want it white, we want it black. Yeah, so if you can see the body color is, let's even make it brighter, just so we can see. So this is the body, and this is the square. This is our loader. Let's make it back 1 on 1. Later maybe we can change it back to black. We should change it back to black. So this is the loader, and now we need to position all of these eyes. As you remember, we have a lot of eyes inside, 120 eyes. So all of the eyes inside, what happened to the music? Okay. There, as I said, is going to be position absolute. They're going to be position absolute relative to the loader, and we need to position them right in the middle. So there is a few ways to do it. The old way, or the way we used to do it, is just setting left of 50% and top of 50%, and let's give it a width of 5 em and a height of 5 em, and again, let's give it a background color so we can see it. So here we have the square, but it's not right in the middle because this top left corner is in the middle. So what we need to do now is give it a transform of translate minus 50%, minus 50%. So now it's back in the center. So this is nice. This could work, but there's actually a better way to do it now. Instead of all of this, we can just use inset. Let's put it up here. And if the inset is 0, so it's the same size because there's no inset. But if the inset is like, let's say 3 em, so we have an inset of 3 em. So we have like a frame of 3 em. If it was 80 em, so it was like this. And if it was 15 em, so it would disappear because this whole thing is 30 ems. So 15 ems from each side, it's 0. But let's say 14. So now we have a 2 em by 2 em square, but let's say 14.5 because we wanted those dots to be small. Okay, so this is fine. Now if we'll inspect it, we can actually see that all of these eyes are right in the center, but they're all one on top of the other, and I want to position them in a circle. Right? This white thing, this is the circle of these eyes. So how do we do it? There is a few ways we're going to do it. I'm actually going to show you a couple of ways. But first, let's start with a simple loop. And when you're working with a large number of elements, like in this animation and other animations, just working with loops is just easier because you can define each one of those nth child individually, but it's just easier. So we're gonna do for I from 0 to 120 because we have 120 eyes. So this loop is gonna run 120 times, and it's gonna select a different element each time. It's gonna select the nth child, okay, and I plus 1. Plus 1 because this is start with 0 and CSS starts with 1. That's it. And I'm going to give each one of these elements an angle. Excuse me. And this angle is going to be 360 degrees. This is the entire circle, 360 degrees. I'm going to divide it by 120 elements because we have, as I said, 120. And then let's multiply it by this, multiply it by I. So we can actually, let's save it for a second. We can go right here in this little arrow. We can see the compiled CSS, and this is what this loop compiled into. The nth child 1 got 0 degrees, the nth child 2 got 3 degrees, because 360 degrees divided by 120 is 3 degrees, so each one of them got plus 3 degrees. So now we have a different angle for each one of these 120 elements. As I said, you can write it manually, it's just easier. Okay, so now we can actually take this angle, and here in the transform, instead of this translate, let's do a translate of x, and here we can use some nice trig functions, the new trig functions that we have in CSS. So the x is actually let's start with the y. The y is the sin of the angle multiplied by the radius. So let's say the radius is 10 em, for example. We can close this, right? And what have I forgot? Calc sin var angle times this was supposed to work. Wait a minute, let's inspect again. Am I missing anything here? Oh, yeah. Okay. The brackets was not in the right place. It's supposed to be here. If you guys in the chat see this error, so correct me on it. Okay, so you can now see, actually, let's start with the top eye, and we can see the top eye is in the middle, and as we go down, it goes down to the bottom, just as a sine wave. Okay, it goes down, up, and down again. So now we can actually take the same thing and do it for the translate x, but the translate x get the cosine. So now we have a circle. Each one of them got a different translate x and y according to the cosine. They're in a perfect circle, but it's not. I also want them to have a rotation. So what I can do, because I don't want them to be all in the same. I want them to be as in the angle from the center. So what we can do is just add a rotate in the end of var angle. Yep, so now we can see each one of those eyes is in the correct angle. Okay, but here's the thing. Once we've done it or we already have the angle, what we can do is actually, let's just copy this line so we can comment it out. We can actually remove all of this cosine and all of these trig functions. So now they're all just in the center, but they're all rotating. Each one of them is rotating a bit. So now I can actually add a translate of y. It was 10 em. So now I can get the same result, but I think in a much easier way. But I think actually 10, maybe let's add border radius. I'm not sure I'm going to use the border radius. Maybe. Yeah, but maybe let's do it 80 em. Yeah, okay. So it is just so it would be closer to this one. I'm recreating something that I already done, but you can or obviously play around with it. Yeah, okay. So we have all those eye in the centers. It's okay. Let's give it a bit of transparency for the background color. Great, even more. Okay, so now we need to create this twining effect around this circle. So we're actually going to do it with pseudo elements. We're going to create two pseudo elements for each one because we have two twines for each eye. So it's obviously the before and the after. So let's start with what we have to do. We have the content. Blank content, which is going to be position absolute. It's going to be relative to the eye. The inset is going to be 0. That means that it's going to be the same size as the eye. And let's remove this border radius from here, but I am going to give it this one border radius, and let's give it a background color. Let's see it. Let's say red. So now, yeah, this is eye, and on each eye we have two pseudo elements. But we need these elements to be twining, to be moving. So again, there's a few ways to do it, and I'm gonna show you a very hacky way that I'm gonna delete afterwards, and you don't use it unless you really have to. But you know, sometimes you need to use some hacks to get what you need. So we're actually gonna create this twine using a paused animation. So let's start with an animation. Let's call it a sine. The duration doesn't really matter, but let's say 2 seconds, again, because it would be paused, but let's say 2 seconds, and we need it to run infinitely, easy in out, and anything else I need? Obviously alternate, because I want it to move as a sine wave, like up and down. So let's add alternate. we're gonna pause it later. Let's create these keyframes. Frames. Sin. So it's from. Here's the thing. If I'm gonna add, let's gonna add the transform here. If I'm gonna translate, because the eyes are right on top of each, the pseudo elements are right on top of each eye. So if I'm gonna translate them on the y-axis, so let's say like 3em. So it's gonna be, yeah, so this is the pseudo elements, the outer circle. If I'm gonna move it to minus 3em, so they're gonna move down, but it's inwards actually. Okay, but that's too much. Let's say 2em maybe. Great. So this animation, what it's gonna do, it's gonna move from plus, let's say 2em, to minus em, minus, why is this, em. Okay, so yep, now it moves, but we need to move each one of them individually, not like this. So right here in this loop, we're gonna add a delay. Oops, not, why did I delete this? Yep, delay. Just a second, and we're gonna add this delay right here, var delay. So this delay, we're gonna set it as to 4 seconds. This is 2 seconds, but it's alternate, so it's 2 seconds for each direction. So it's 4 seconds in total. Again, divided by 120 times I. But we need the animation, the delay to always be negative, so it's minus 4 seconds. Okay. So okay, what we see now is just this. Each one of those circles moves in a different time, so it just looks like a circle that is rotating. But if, let's put this in brackets, and let's say 120, let's say divided by 2. So now we actually, yeah, we're changing the duration, the delay for 2 repetitions. So now we have a different sign, and if we have 3, so it's gonna look like this, and if we have 5 or whatever you want, let's say 8, or maybe even, it's gonna, yep, maybe even 10. Yeah, so it looks great, but now, as I said, this needs to be paused. So this way you can actually create, let's close it, you can actually create these types of scene waves in circles or straight lines, whatever you want, not by using any trig function, just by using animation and easing out. But we're not going to use any of this. Let's comment it out. I'm going to comment the delay also. What we are going to use, because we already have this angle, we are going to use some CSS trig functions, because in this case it's just easier. So we're going to say that translate y. This actually, it's supposed to be the same as here. So let's say calc sin, but not 2em. Okay, so this is the same thing that we said earlier, but we can actually say that if we say times 2, so we get 2 and 3. Great, but we said 10. Looks great. We can actually turn it down to 1. Yeah, looks great. Okay, so this is just one of them. This is just the before or the after. Right now they're on top of the other, but we need them to be on opposite sides. Okay, so what we need to do is we're going to change this value into a variable. Oops. Let's call it maximum y. And we're going to give the 1em as a default. Oops. So now we can actually set, just for the after, we can set the max y. I forgot to set here the max y to minus 1em. And yep, okay, so now we have those two twining things. Once everything is gonna be blurred and together, once we put the filter on, it's gonna look much better than this. Hi Roland, how are you? Um, yeah, so we're creating. If for those of us who just join us, we're recreating this loader, and we just put a lot of eyes inside of a div, located them in place, and use pseudo elements to create those twines. And now we're at. I want to deal at the color. So the color, we already have this loop, so it's going to be very easy to add a hue here, a hue variable, and it's going to be very similar to this one. Let's just say $I times 3, just because it's easier to do less. Instead of 360 divided by 120 times I. And then we can take this variable, and instead of this background color, instead of red, let's say that it's an HSL of var hue, because the HSL get a hue, saturation, and a light. So let's give it a high saturation and a medium light, so we can get vibrant colors. Great. So now we have all these colors, but I want these colors to be offset. Okay, so like here, you can see it's offset. So I can add it through another variable or whatever, but I can just set this background color here because I already have this software. Just do a calc of this hue plus 180, so it's the other side. So whoa, oh, I said times 120. That's actually looks nice, but yeah. So now we have those two lines. There any questions in the chat, by the way? I don't see any questions. If you do, this is the time. Yeah, so this is the colors, this is the positioning, this is the basic thing before we're gonna start doing this animation. And we're gonna move two things. Actually, let's start with the pseudo elements. Let's use this animation instead of scene. What we're gonna use here is we're gonna change the scale of it. Okay. So, and actually let's give it a duration. So a variable, so I'm gonna set this duration right here, a duration, let's say 3 seconds. So this duration, we need to use it. Oh, no, oh, it's here, it's okay, but we're gonna use it in the delay. We're gonna talk about delay in a second. It's supposed to be infinite, easy and out, it's okay, I think. Alternate, obviously not paused. And the keyframes, so we already have a transform here, so let's just take the transform here. But let's add a scale of, let's say from 0 to 1. And if I have, I need to change the animation, the keyframe's name. Yeah, does it work? No. Why did I forgot? Why did I miss? Sometimes CodePen just oh yeah, okay. CodePen just sometimes just gets stuck. Yeah, but it's still the animation still doesn't work for some reason. Let's inspect it for a second. Let's see. The animation scale. Oh, it doesn't get a delay. So let's set a default value, obviously, of the delay. So just so we can see the animation work. Okay, so this is what the animation does. It grows the scale from 0 to 1. Okay, but again, we want it to be each one individually. So we're going to use this delay here. Instead of this -4 second, we're going to use the duration times -2. Again, because it's alternate, so it's a duration for each direction, so it's times 2, but -2 because we want it to be negative. So this is the way we do it. Negative and times 10. Again, I don't want it to be 10 individuals, so let's do like times 2. If I do it once, so I'll just have it in doing one rotation. In the original one, I made 3. We can use 3 or you can use 4, whatever you want. Again, I'm just changing the duration, and by changing the duration, I'm changing the times of the repetitions of this animation. Well, let's change it back to 3. Okay, so this is this delay, and before we're gonna handle the other animation, let's talk about the filter, because this looks great, but it doesn't look like this one. And this is the main difference. So let's remove this background color from the eye. Let's just focus on the colors. And what we're gonna use is a effect that a lot of people call it a GUI effect, and it's a combination of 2 filters. It's a blur filter that we're gonna blur everything out, so everything is gonna mix in together, and then we're gonna add a contrast to close everything back. So first, let's add a blur, and we can add a small blur, much smaller than this, I think. Yeah, so let's add a 0.5 EM. Again, I'm using EM, so everything would be relative. That's even too much, so 0, that's a quarter EM. Yeah, that's about right. So again, just to see the difference between without a filter, so we can actually see those individual spots, and with a blur, so everything is blurred together. But we do want to have this sharp look, so what we're doing is adding a contrast, and the contrast should be pretty small. Let's say 5, let's say 4. Those values you can play around and get different values. Like if I have a smaller contrast, or I get a bigger blur, and like with a higher contrast, let's say like 20, so it would be, yeah, very very very, you can see the edges very clearly. I'm gonna put it quite low, like around 4, because I think it's maybe 5. I think it looks great. So when you're using the GUI effect, a lot of the time you see it, people use it with black and white, because this is what it does. It just mix things together. But when you use it in colors, the contrast actually use each one of the colors of the color channels individually. So if you have colors that are somewhere in the middle, and I'm using the HSL, the light is 50%, so the colors are somewhere in the middle. So if the green is above 127, and the black and the blue and the red are below, so the color would be much more green. So it just makes the color much more vibrant as they getting closer to the edge. This is why you get those effects inside of this twine. But let's comment this line again for a second, because I do want to handle the animation of the center. So let's add the background color. Now you can't actually animate the opacity, because if you animate the opacity, you also animate the opacity of the pseudo elements. So I'm gonna animate the background color. I know it's not the most performant, but again, it works just fine. So let's add an animation. Let's call it color. Let's call it circle. Circle. The duration. Okay, so actually we're gonna need 2 duration, and those durations are not. They don't need to be reliant on one each other. So duration. So this will be duration 1. Okay, so this one duration 1. Let's set it for 2 seconds, and duration 2. So now the delay is delay 2 on duration 2, and this is delay 2 on duration 2. Yep, okay. And now we need duration 1. So it's duration 1, and I'm actually going to use a var delay 1. Let's give it a. We're going to set the delay 1 in a second. We need it to be infinite, and that's it for now. Let's set the keyframes. Circle. So I'm not going to use from, let's start with the 0% and 100%. So the start and the end, because I haven't used alternate here. So the start and the end, I'm going to use a background color of transparent. Let's use this type of transparent just because it's easier for me. And then somewhere in the middle, let's say 50%, and I'm going to change it obviously, so it's going to be white. And yeah, so now obviously it's just blinking, but we need to add a delay. So let's add just like the delay here. I'm actually not going to use the same thing here. Let's rewrite it because it's supposed to be. I want it to turn the other way around. So as I said, the delay always needs to be negative because I want the animation to start immediately. But there's two ways of doing animation, negative animation. One is like, the second one actually, like the delay 2, is just by multiplying the delay in a negative with a negative number. The second one is let's say duration 1 divide by 120 times I. So now this duration is positive, but now what I can do is just add minus duration 1. So this value is also delay 1. So this value is also always negative. And if I haven't mistaken, yeah, okay. So now I have this, and I do want it to have one rotation, but I want to change a few things. Actually, I do need to add this border radius. I think it's gonna look better. Yeah, the border radius on the eye itself. So here on the keyframes, so instead of 50, let's just change it to 5. So the start is gonna be very fast, and then the trail in the back is supposed to be shorter. So let's say something like 25%. Yeah, that looks better. So now there's 3 twines moving in one way, the circle moving in a different direction, and we can change those times individually because they don't dependent on one another. And so now when we add the filter effect, this is the result we get. If you want this center line to be smaller, you can change the size of the eye and everything, but you can also change the opacity. Let's change it to, let's say 9, so you can see, because it's now less opacity, it's smaller. Let's change it even to 7. Yeah, and just to make so let's make the body background black, so it would so it would look better. And I'm just gonna go over the code and clear everything. I'm gonna go over everything and clean things while I'm gonna do it. So here we have as I said, all we have is just a simple reset and body, just background color and things to center things inside of the body. We have 2 durations. One is for the center white circle. The 2 is for the twining. So if I put it like in 1, so it would be much faster, the circle. Yep. No, let's make it 3. So what we have in the HTML is a loader with a whole bunch of eyes in them, 120 eyes. A loader, position relative, because everything is going to be relative to this loader. We have a width, a height, background color. We need the background color, by the way. If we won't have the background color, so the contrast won't work. So all we have is the blur. It would work in some places because the contrast needs something to contrast with. It can't contrast with opacity, with transparency. So we need a background color for this loader. Yep. And inside this loader we have an eye, position absolute. We did the inset just so it would be right in the center. So if this is 30 EMs and we have an inset of 14.5 EM, the size of each eye is 1 EM on 1 EM. This background color, we can remove it, and the transform. Yeah, so what we're doing with the transform, we're rotating each one of these eyes just a little bit 3 degrees more than the previous one, and then translate it y on the y-axis ATM. Yeah, we use border radius, and I'm using the border color to animate the white to transparent. This is transparent, and this is just very semi-opaque white. Yeah, I also had, let's move this loop down to the bottom. Yeah, so I used two. No, I need this before that. I used 2 pseudo elements on each one of those eyes, and those pseudo elements, this is this twining coloring things that are moving. Obviously, content 0, black content, we have position absolute. They're positioned absolute to the parent. Inset 0, that meaning that they're the same size as the parent. The background color, I'm setting it with a hue, with a variable. We're gonna see the loop in a second. And I'm giving the after a different hue. Hue plus an offset of 100. We can actually change the offset. Let's say 120. Yeah, you can. No, I actually like the 180 degrees, just the other way around, and I actually like it. Yeah, again, border radius, we don't need this, and we're using the scale to animate it. So we have the translate y. As I said, we used calc to translate each one of those y's to place, and we're scaling it from 0 to 1. Yeah, so just quick for the let's go over the loop, and I'm gonna see the compiled version again, just see. Okay, so you can see that the first one has 0 angle, 0 u, and this is the delay, and each one of those consecutive eyes has a 3 degrees, 3 u, 6 degrees, and so on, and the delay is calculated accordingly. Yeah, so this is just a very simple loop to set this angle, the hue, and everything else. And that's it, I think. Yeah, it's a pretty simple project. And again, don't be afraid of using a lot of divs. As you see, it's running just perfectly, and so no problem. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you. Next week, I'm gonna do another one because it's Christmas, and I'm gonna do a snow globe. So it's gonna be nice. It's gonna be 3D, lots of perspective, multiple animations. It's gonna take a bit longer than today, but it's gonna be great. I hope so. So thanks again for everybody that joined us. Thank you if you're watching this recording later, and bye. See you in the next stream. Bye for now.